Our next speaker is Tamara Ugolini. Is Tamara here? My apologies if I mispronounced that, Tamara. You'll have 3 minutes whenever you're ready. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Tamara Ugolini, and I am here to defend our right to informed consent, a parent's right to make medical choices for their children, and bodily sovereignty. For several years, public health has been unlawfully suspending children under the ISPA. In Ontario, legally, only a principal can suspend a child under the Education Act, and nowhere under this Act is it noted that an entirely separate ministry has the ability to do this. When the Medical Officer of Health's authority is in question, we have seen public health across Ontario pressure principals into calling CAS, withholding busing, and ostracizing completely healthy children by restricting them to the office and withholding their recess. This is bullying and coercion, and it is wrong. We don't send our children to public health to learn their ABCs or 1, 2, 3s, just as we don't send our children to public school so they can receive medical procedures or have one-sided vaccine data pushed on them. As a Canadian citizen, it is my fundamental right to exercise freedom of medical choice. It is an infringement on said right that I require an affidavit to opt out of a questionable medical procedure with horribly inadequate safety data. The exemption process violates our chartered rights. Newfoundland and Labrador, for instance, have no exemption process in place, and yet they have the highest vaccine uptake in the country. Public Health's agenda today provides no research into why parents may be hesitant. It makes no attempt to answer any of the questions requested of Theresa Tam in November of 2018 to provide concerned parents with vaccine safety data, including the safety of injected aluminum, long-term clinical trials, and the lack of true saline placebos. This is not about misinformation. This is about missing information. For instance, grade 7 consent forms were sent out these last few weeks by Public Health to schools across Ontario. Nowhere in these consent forms do they mention informed consent, provide any monographs, or that there is an exemption process in place. They use words like required and mandatory to coerce compliance. Then Strategy Section E, you note clearly the Canadian Code of Advertising standard responsible for prohibiting inaccurate and misleading advertisements, and yet here you are making statements like vaccines are required and mandatory. Who holds you accountable for these misleading statements and inaccurate verbiage? Furthermore, Public Health has the audacity to propose censorship of social media pages and search engines, remove vaccine monographs, stating that they're confusing and they're not required for informed consent. The first element of informed consent is that it is voluntary, and the third is to properly inform the patient. And yet here you are attempting to censor that. And I have to just continue on. Is it any wonder there is mounting distrust of public health, a ministry that expects you to give them all of your information and then utilize it on their various platforms, and yet simultaneously removes freedom of speech, infringes on your fundamental rights, and intentionally censors informed consent? So when Theresa Tam can provide us with the safety data, when Big Pharma is not directly influencing what our medical professionals learn and recommend, perhaps then we can address the reason for vaccine hesitancy. And as per your agenda here today, I do not consent.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Are there any questions of the deputant? Seeing none, our next